You know, when I proclaimed martial law, I didn't proclaim martial law alone. It is made to appear as if I just signed the decree and said, I impose martial law on each and every one of you. No. I asked the legislature to please pass a law proclaiming martial law because there was anarchy in the country. Now, let me say this. The opposition was strong. And they were members of the Security Council, and somehow they had adopted a resolution which required that there be a unanimous vote for the armed forces to be able to move. And therefore, the armed forces was immobilized. At the same time, I asked the opposition party to come and join me in a coalition government. I offered one half of the cabinet. And of course, they laughed at me and said, why should we join you? We're going to take over the government. By the time you're through with the exercise, you're dead, politically and otherwise. And they refused to join me. I asked the advice of the judiciary. I asked the Supreme Court justices, the Court of Appeals justices, and the members of the private sector. And all of them told me there's only one man who can proclaim martial law, and that is the President. And you are it. You are the only one who can proclaim martial law. This is why I must carry this particular mark in our history. I could not have transferred it to the legislature. Why? Because the legislature did not have the power. What does the Constitution provide? The President shall be the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and he may order the armed forces out to quell any disorder, riot, rebellion, invasion, insurrection, and in case of invasion, insurrection, rebellion, or imminent danger thereof, when the public safety requires it, he may suspend the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus or proclaim martial law throughout the Philippines or any part thereof. What does that provision provide? It provides that only the President can proclaim martial law. I repeat, that is why I had to assume responsibility. And I am not one for shirking duty. The people said there was necessity for proclaiming martial law. And the people said, you are the only official who can proclaim martial law. So I proclaimed martial law. And I sincerely believed that it was necessary to proclaim martial law to install order and stability because there was complete anarchy throughout the country at the time. Now, therefore, at that particular period, what was the status of our government? Our government was immobilized, impotent. The armed forces could not move out. The industry was not at all in any way moving. There was no income coming into government. Everybody was running away. They burned the U.S. Partly burned the U.S. Embassy, tried to burn it anyway. They tried to kidnap the American ambassador. American ambassador was Byroad, Ambassador Byroad. And they tried to kidnap our foreign minister, Romulo, whom you just saw today. And I told him, you better disappear because I will not ransom you. But whatever it is, they burned the Manila International Airport, they bombed the Supreme Court, they bombed the Constitutional Convention, they bombed the City Hall, they burned part of Malacanang Palace, they attempted to kidnap my children, they attempted to kill the President 8 times. There was, of course, an attempted assassination against the First Lady. You all know about that. And this required that I immediately act on it, and so I did. Now, we established land reform. We were fighting a group known as the Hukbalahap, Hukbong Nagpapalaya ng Bayan. It was socialist inclined. It was leftist. But they were friends of mine because we had fought in the Second World War together. And so I approached them and I said, look, I'm going to establish land reform. If you're fighting for land reform, against the feudalistic agrarian system, then you must join me. And they did. I want to introduce to you the leader of that rebellion, who is now present and is a part of the government, Mr. Luis Taruk. He is a member of the National Assembly. One reason why he ran to the hills, according to him, was he was elected as a member of the old legislature and he was not recognized as such. He and the others. Now I want to introduce to you another leader of the Free Farmers Federation, which is also composed of farmers who wanted reform, but who are fighting for reform, but who are now joining in the effort to establish political stability and economic prosperity throughout the country, and who was Dean of the College of Law of the University of Ateneo, but abandoned his deanship in order that he may join in the effort to attain the noble mission of this new society. I refer to National Assemblyman Jerry Montemayor, President of the Federation of Free Farmers of the Philippines. I would like to introduce also to you a young man who was very active against the government in 1972 and who paraded around the streets raising the flag of the Communist Party and organized the Kabataan Makabayan, which is the red organization of the youth. And this man is Nilo Tayag. Is he here? Anyway, he is somewhere around here. But they have all joined, all these activists, to prove to you that all these stories about our being oppressive against our enemies and our friends, they've all joined the government to help reform and drive out all the corrupt people in the government. We have an ombudsman. We are the only country with an ombudsman. You know what an ombudsman is. He is the officer who watches over the corrupt officials of government. And this man has charged more than 1,000 officers and employees and sent most of them to jail. Is Justice Pamaran here? He must be somewhere around. Where's Justice Pamaran? There he is. There's the ombudsman. And so as I now sign this proclamation in full view of our nation and the world at large, I am profoundly conscious of the tasks that remain, hoping that we shall not lose the momentum of our achievements so that those who shall come after us may carry the quest of a greater, a brighter world, a new society. I pray now, and I ask you to pray with me, as I prayed 8 years ago, that I am doing, that we are doing the right thing by our people. For the end of martial law does not mean the end of our efforts, of our needed reforms, of our struggles, of our sacrifices. The passing of the martial necessity does not carry with it the passing of all the burdens, especially the heavy ones. There will be more tests for our capacity, for our resiliency, our strength as a people. Together we must pass these tests, surmount all crises. And so, as I have said, I sign in your presence proclaiming the termination of the state of martial law throughout the Philippines. I say, we have just begun. I will now read the dispositive portion of this decree. Now therefore, I, Ferdinand E. Marcos, President, Prime Minister of the Philippines, by virtue of the powers vested in me by the Constitution, do hereby revoke Proclamation 1081, proclaiming a state of martial law in the Philippines, and Proclamation number 1104, dated January 17, 1973, declaring the continuation of martial law, and proclaim the termination of the state of martial law throughout the Philippines, provided that the call to the armed forces of the Philippines to prevent or suppress lawless violence, insurrection, rebellion, and subversion shall continue to be in force and effect, and provided that in the two autonomous regions in Mindanao, upon the request of the residents thereof, the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall continue, and in all other places the suspension of the privilege of the writ shall also continue with respect to persons at present detained, as well as others who may hereafter be similarly detained for the crimes of insurrection or rebellion, subversion, conspiracy, or proposal to commit such crimes, and for all other crimes and offenses committed by them in furtherance or in the occasion thereof, or incident thereof, or in connection therewith. General Order number 8 is also hereby revoked, and the military tribunals created pursuant thereto are hereby dissolved. Pursuant to Article 17, Section 2, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, all proclamations, orders, decrees, instructions, acts promulgated, issued and done by the incumbent President constitute part of the law of the land and shall remain valid, legal, binding, and effective even after the lifting of martial law, unless modified, revoked, superseded, or altered by subsequent proclamations, orders, decrees, instructions, or other acts of the incumbent President, or unless expressly and explicitly modified or repealed by the National Assembly or the Batasan Pambansa. In witness hereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the Republic to be affixed on the 17th day of January 1981. Thank you.